Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK radio network.
The instruments here are going crazy.
I think what we've been suspecting all along may already be happening, Doctor.
I'm almost sure of it. Get into your choppers and head north immediately. Don't stop for a thing. It may be the end of the world.
Hello, this is Ronald Kinsella, and you're listening to the Paranormal UK radio network, the UK's biggest paranormal network, and this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young.
Hello, welcome to the show. Thank you for that introduction, Ronald. I hope everyone's keeping well out there. Today's guest is Paul Vecchiet. Now, he's written a novel. It's based on a lot of true experiences. I'll just run through a little bit about it. It's a science fiction novel called The Disclosure Paradox. It's about a UFO lecturer named Louis Silvani, and he's an ET obsessed blogger. He struggles to convey a sense of urgency to his curious followers. After a failed presentation and a terrifying encounter, Louis meets Mary Ellen Velarde, a Cherokee Apache woman with divine knowledge of Louis himself. Together they embark on a fast-paced journey of discovery, full of physical and spiritual challenges and people with astonishing abilities. As Mary Ellen gradually reveals her own unique identity, a cell of abductees and veterans forms with the goal of assisting civilization towards its true destiny. Is disclosure the one event that needs to happen in order to save humanity from itself? So that's the gist of the book. It sounds pretty interesting. Right, joining me on the show today is the lovely... What's your name?
Juliet.
No, I'm only joking. It's a lovely Juliet Gregson.
Oh, dear. What you like, David? Thank you very much indeed.
But now, how are you doing, Juliet? You all right?
I'm doing well. I think here I'd like to say sunny Blackpool, but it's not. It's. Is it going to rain? Is it not going to rain?
Oh,
is it going to thunder? We're not.
It's a bit like that, is it? Oh, it's been scorching down here today. Honestly, it's been too hot last few days. It's. In fact, I've got my fan on. I don't know if you can hear it in the background there, but it's been stifling. Anyway, what have you been up to?
Well, I've been sorting out my bookcases, and I really, really must take some pictures because I've got some books I think you might be interested in.
Good. We've got a book person on today, have we? With Paul.
Oh yes, we have indeed.
It sounds like a very interesting book. He's got
it does.
Paul Vecchiet.
Definitely. Two books. One. Right. Do you remember Michael Bentine?
Michael Bentine. Yes. He was one of the original Goons, wasn't he? With Harry Seacombe, Peter Sellers and Spike Milligan.
He was indeed. I remember him from Potty Time.
No, that's the thing. I wondered if it was the same Michael Bentine for the moment. That's the only Michael Bentine I know.
Many moons ago, my mum says, borrow this book, Michael Bentine. I was like, what? And he did two books, Doors of the Mind and another one called The Door Marked Summer. See, I knew him as, of course, member of the Goons. My dad used to listen to that before I was born and as I was growing up.
I've got to tell you, I've got a couple of Goons tunes on my iPod.
Oh, fantastic.
The Ying Tong song, miss it,
yeah. I'm walking backwards for Christmas. Oh, dear. Yes, you always wanted Harry Seacombe just to break into raspberries during songs of praise.
If I ruled the world, yeah.
If I... Right, Michael Bentine books, because you think, absolutely fantastic. It's about his spiritual journey and his parents' spiritual journey. They're old, but they're brilliant. If you can get them, I found eBay, Amazon. They don't come up very often, but if you can get a copy, get them. Oh. They're really good.
Oh, you surprised me. I didn't know he was sort of that way inclined. Yeah.
I didn't. I'm sort of reading it going, I've got to get the next one. I don't recommend books that often, but some you've got to have in your library. Others, you think, you know, it's absolutely fantastic. It's like
are they available on Kindle as well, do you think?
I don't know. I think we'll have to look. I'll let you know if I can see them on Kindle, or if I find a link, I'll go, get this now.
Because sometimes books like that you might not find as a paperback or anything, because they get a bit rare, don't they? Or if they're rare, they get very expensive.
Oh, it's like that Jenny Randall's one, isn't it? And it's ridiculous. Which one is it? There's one and it's a silly price. It's a Pendle. I remember like 30 quid. It wasn't that much when it came.
Oh, I don't know about 30 quid. You sometimes you see it for like £2,000 or something, don't you? I was ridiculous prices. I know a couple of Malcolm Robinson's original prints of his books. I saw one up for £2,000. I thought, who's going to pay that for? Unless you're a multi-millionaire, what really wants that book? You know, no one's going to pay that sort of money for it.
Are you sure Malcolm didn't actually put it?
Maybe, yeah. Yes.
Malcolm, if you're listening, I'm sorry, I'm not. You're Scottish.
No, he does know about that because I sent him that link and I said, "Have you seen this, Malcolm?" And he said, "Oh no, it's ridiculous."
But it's like, I think we've had a discussion before. It's like, what's in your library? Some of the books we probably all got and they overlap, but there's other oddities.
Yeah.
Which are just some of you just think, oh, I must get that one, or oh, I must get this one, and then it's like second-hand bookshops, or if somebody recommends.
Oh, I love second-hand bookshops going through those. They've got the smell of their own, haven't they? All those rotten old books and. But I just love looking for they're like a little bit of treasure, aren't they? Looking for that little special something. Even charity shops, you get that feeling sometimes. You come across, think, oh, I've got to have that, for £1 or something.
Oh, I think the cheapest book I got, which I know is rare, it's called The Magical Record of the Beast 666, The Journals of Aleister Crowley.
Oh, well.
And I paid, yeah. Technically I paid £5, but I didn't, because it was a lovely late medium called Paula Paradema, and she was just getting rid of all the books, and she had a lot of Aleister Crowley books, so I probably spent about 20 quid on 5 books. Wow,
that is a bargain.
Bargain.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've sort of looked at it's something, they're weird, but they're interesting, so
yeah.
I'm sort of looking at, I know you can't see me, I'm sort of tilting my head sideways going, yeah,
I can imagine.
I'll take pictures later. It's just silly things like that I didn't sort of go, oh, I didn't buy it to sell it. I bought it because I thought, this is quite interesting.
Yeah, I might have mentioned to you before, I bought a load of like PDF sets. Like they're basically they're like digital copies of old ancient books. So you get them on eBay, you can get them on like 200 books on a DVD or something, and I think they're all in the public domain, and somebody's basically put them all together on a DVD to save you go searching for them. But you can find some interesting bits of treasure like that.
Oh, definitely. I do like having a book, and they're just collectors, but there's part of me that goes, yeah, but if somebody's written weird, or they've been signed by the author.
And also, that's what I'm saying, if you're lucky enough to meet the author, you can get it scribbled on for you as well, can't you? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. It's like I'm looking forward to buying more of Phil and Ron Kinsella's books.
Yeah, I've got a few of those. I was lucky.
I've only got the one so far.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get an advance copy of Philip's next book. I gave it to him, signed it for me and sent it to me. So it's one of my proud possessions. But when it comes out, I'll actually go and buy a copy as well, because I think it's something that you keep the signed one on the shelf, and then you read read the other. I haven't actually read it yet, so I'm going to leave that signed and in pristine condition. I'll read it when it comes out. But,
yeah. Definitely.
Anyway, sorry, good. Do you want to carry on about your books, or should we get the guest on?
We should probably get the guest on, otherwise we'll be waffling about books all evening.
Okay.
That would be fantastic.
He's waiting in the wings. Right. Hello, welcome to the show, Paul. How are you?
Hello, David. I'm very fine. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to be honest with everyone out there. Paul's been very kind. He's coming back to record this again because we did actually record this a few days ago and nothing happened. We just missed it all. So thank you very much to Paul. I'm being honest. We're doing this show again, and I do appreciate it, Paul. Thank you.
Well, you know everything about me now, so, you know.
Yes. I mean, this is one of my failings. I can't help but just tell the truth, you know.
Right.
So, sometimes it gets me into trouble, but unfortunately I've got to, you know. And you can shut up, Juliet.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, Juliet's joining us again, as you know.
Thank you.
Anyway, Paul, so what made you decide to write this novel? It sounds very interesting. I did read an intro out for it at the beginning of the show, and it does sound quite fascinating. As I say, what made you decide to write the novel?
Well, I didn't know I was going to write a novel, but I did know that from the beginning of 2009 until recently 2019, for a decade, I've had a series of either transmissions or contact or synchronous events that certainly have indicated that something is going on, and that I need to somehow document it in a manner, especially with the information that I was getting through the transmissions from the psychic person that would give me those messages. So the novel really is taking the decade and condensing it into 2 weeks of where it would be a dynamic and an exciting cross-country trip where the main character, based on myself, meets individuals, real people that I have met, but they've been fictionalized in the novel, and it puts together the puzzle where I link the phenomenon of extraterrestrials with our spirituality, and at the same time recognizing that we have a widening gap in society between religion and science. It kind of bridges that gap. So I needed to document all that information, and I decided over one weekend to write an outline, and the outline was 31 pages, and I wrote it all in one weekend, and that's how I started with the novel.
Yeah, that's a hell of a lot to write, isn't it, over a weekend? Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so sorry. How did you oh yeah, you mentioned that there's people that have been fictionalized in the story. Are you using any real names at all?
No, there are no real names in the novel. There are individuals that prefer to be anonymous.
Yeah.
And just for the sake of how I made the plot and the subplots, the individuals that are in the novel, the characters that are in the novel, are not necessarily one-to-one relationships between real people. For instance, the character that is the Hikari Apache woman is really a composite of 2 or 3 women that I know that are psychic. And so I've taken their characters and put it into Mary Ellen Velarde, who is a Hikari Apache woman. And of course the Hikari Apache trait is necessary to fit with the plot, which involves Dulce, New Mexico, and Roswell.
Right. So how did you decide to which real people would be fictionalized? Did you come to a decision that way?
Mostly the individuals that I have met that have had unique abilities, experiences, psychic. A lot of the common thread here is spirituality, and so every one of the individuals, characters in the novel, have either had some sort of experience related to either abductions or some sort of telepathic communication.
Right.
And that's what I recognize as the individuals that I have met in that decade.
I see. Are there any famous sort of names that we'd know that you've sort of kept hidden?
Yes, and again, there are two women that people probably will recognize once they read the novel of who the individuals are based on. But again, the preference is to keep them anonymous.
Right. What do you think about that, Juliet?
Absolutely fascinating. I mean, obviously, as David, you said before, we have discussed this before, but it's sort of leading on, you know, listening to Paul and sort of thinking, oh, I forgot to ask that last time. Going back to the Catholicism and the Apache Indians, do you think, Paul, that the Vatican, for want of a better, you know, word, are suppressing information about what's going on? What do you think?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, well, you know, I remember asking about that, especially, you know, reading Dan Brown's books about, you know, what he's written about the Vatican. There's a lot of truth in there, and I certainly feel that over the years, over the millennia, there has been so much information kept from the public. You know, recall that in the 1400s, they actually jailed Galileo because, you know, of his scientific theory, which was pretty much fighting against the archaic beliefs in the Bible. So, yes, I certainly feel that there is a lot of information that goes beyond what we would consider, you know, conventional information that is locked up in those vaults in the Vatican.
Yeah, I think we'd all like to get a look in there.
Well, they actually have a Vatican astronomer.
Wow.
You know, they have a Vatican observatory. So there must be some sort of interest there that it just doesn't make sense. So why would they have an astronomer? There's nothing about that in the Bible.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard about the Vatican astronomer. It does seem a bit strange that they're sort of looking spacewards, aren't they? You know, and everything's...
Right.
I think I'm pretty sure they've got a lot of knowledge about ancient aliens, for instance, like the TV show. And I think a lot of the knowledge is locked away in the Vatican. I've got no way of proving it, but it's just a suspicion.
I think going back to what Paul said about Dan Brown, obviously, David, you know, I'm a Mason, and Paul, I think I said, you know, it's interesting because it's like you said, some of the information is brilliant, it's relevant. I remember reading the books and going, and then there's other parts I went, no.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you're kind of stepping over a line. It's like when people go, Illuminati! Sorry for saying it like Monty Python there, but what information would they hold? Is it real? Is it not? What else is tying in there? I think we hit upon Nazis and the black occult, and did that have an impact with ufology back in the, you know, World War II? I think we discussed that, didn't we?
Well, I think there's been a lot of confusion thrown into the pot to you know, for that reason, to keep us all confused about it. You know, what's true and what isn't. You know, it's that's the continuing question. You don't really know what is true and what isn't in a lot of this.
And yes, that goes back to, if you recall, how I feel that the establishment prefers to have all kinds of information out there. So, you know, my book, it really, I don't think there's a threat to the current situation, because they're not going to acknowledge, and they certainly, you know, we will not challenge it. And when they don't acknowledge or challenge information, it leaves it out to the public to decide, and the public really is not equipped to make that kind of decision. So, you know, for instance, the show The X-Files is a brilliant example of how they get away with providing truth and providing hoaxes all in with the same tenor, in the same voice, so that it confuses the public, and so individuals may recognize everything in that show as hoax rather than seeing through and being able to detect what is truth and what is not.
Yeah, I think they do that a lot with films and things, for instance. They put something out there so that then they can say, well, it's just a movie. You know, you can't take any notice of it, it's just a movie. You know? Because obviously they'll put the truth right in your face, but then they could just say, well, it's just a movie.
Have you heard, and I think this is true, that at least in the United States, there is an intelligence operative, either connected with the Hollywood studios or with major media outlets, just to make certain that certain information is not released to the public, and that it is captured. And at the same time, those individuals are also responsible for giving producers and directors ideas to, again, provide more information to confuse the public.
Yeah. Well, I think that was the case with Close Encounters, wasn't it? The Third Kind.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Where it was based on the event at Holloman Air Force Base, which is documented in my book, by the way. Oh, it
is, right. So, when people read your book, Paul, what do you want readers to think after they've read it?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because the intent is, if the individual is an atheist, I want them to come away with thinking that there's much more out there than what they can see and feel and touch, and that there are greater forces beyond what we consider the laws of physics. However, if you are a religious person, understand that those forces that you believe in, that greater force that you believe in, it can be explained through the laws of physics and science.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by bridging that gap between science and religion.
Yeah, sure.
The truth depends on both.
Yeah. It's a personal question, but have you been a religious person in your time?
I was brought up Catholic, and I endured 8 years of Catholic school, and from the very beginning, I just felt uncomfortable with the whole thing. And that's documented in a chapter in my novel too, where there's just all kinds of questions that went through my head when I was just a young child, and being brought up in a strict Catholic environment. You were not allowed to question things.
Yeah.
You were just given it and accept it. And I wasn't like that, and I always got bad grades in Catholicism because of that.
Yeah. I was a bit like, I wasn't brought up in a strict church environment or anything like that, but I was brought up in, we've got the Church of England over here, which is basically Christian. When I got to about 15, I was actually confirmed member of the church as well. And when I got to about 15, I started questioning it. It just that, I started asking more questions of myself and thinking more about, I don't know, space and everything else, and it just didn't make sense to me. So I probably went the same route as you. When you start thinking for yourself, you start to think, well, there's more to all this than we've been led to believe. What about you, Juliet? I'm not sure about your religions and beliefs and things.
I believe there is a greater being, whether that is God, Morgan Freeman. See, you say, you can hear him saying things in the voice of God when he's been in films. I mean, we can't have Samuel Jackson. That will be, that'll just be interesting. Religion is a personal thing, be it, is there something higher? Are there deities? Are people atheists? Are they born again Christians? It's one of those you could do an entirely different show just on the subject of religion.
Yeah. I mean, you can go to David Icke way and say we're all part of one greater being, aren't we, kind of thing. We're all just one big part of spiritualism, which I think, Paul, is kind of where your book is heading, isn't it?
Yes, but, going back to what Georgette or Juliet was talking about.
Georgette!
Yay!
So
New variation. Brilliant. Thank you.
Juliet. Sorry.
No, it's not a problem.
It's a running joke.
I think we might have told you, but there's a joke about Juliet's name and everything. But and you've just thrown another one into the ring.
Oh, Paul, your ace.
Well, fell into that one. Well, the one thing is that I get greater, negative response from atheists than I do from religious people about my book. And that's because the atheist becomes that way through some very personal event that occurred to him or her that made them think that certainly there is no God or this would not happen, kind of thing. Whereas the religious person is taught or goes through an institution, and so I think the belief is much stronger for atheists than it is for the religious people. Yeah.
There was a time when I called myself an atheist, but I don't think I'm really an atheist, because I'm much like you. I think I'm more of a spiritual belief person, that we're all part of a one greater thing. Right. Call it God, whatever. I think God is just like a label, really, isn't it? Because we like to call something, don't we?
Yes. I could tell you that after grade school, that I did have a synchronous event, which is documented in the novel, where I was listening to a rock station when I was in high school and fell asleep, and then awoke to a voice, a person being interviewed, and he had a German accent, and he was talking about the Bible and aliens in the Bible, and that was of course the Swiss ancient aliens theorist, I forgot his name.
Eric von Däniken.
Eric von Däniken, right.
My hero, one of them.
Right. And so the next morning I went back to school and looked up in the Bible, and sure enough, everything that he talked about was there. And right there was one event that caused me to really think over our existence and our history and our connection with what they call God. So that's one thing that I document that put me on the path that I am in now.
Yeah, much like me, I think he's the one that really kicked off my real deep interest in this when Chariots of the Gods came out in 66, I think it was 66, wow. Something like that. And I've actually been lucky enough to meet Eric von Däniken quite a few times too. And my little claim to fame, I was actually in the same hotel he was in Manchester. And as I came into the hallway, to check in, Eric von Däniken was there with Nick Pope. And I said, when I went over, I said, "Oh, Mr. von Däniken," because I've met him before. He said, "Oh, I remember you." I mean, and I was flabbergasted that he said that, So that's always been something that I thought, I feel quite blown away about that.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's
great. He's a really nice chap, actually. As is Nick. I mean, we had a drink in the bar in the evening, and Nick's quite funny after he's had a couple of gin and tonics.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. Anyway, got off tin a bit there.
Yeah, you've got to come on, David, come on.
But Ancient Aliens, I think, is a fascinating show. I can't say you can believe absolutely everything that's in it, but it does actually make you think about everything that's in it. And the thing that I find most interesting in it is the fact that it takes you to places where you probably never get the chance to see, and the photography is so fantastic, and you're basically taken to all the places that you'd never get access to, aren't you? You know,
Absolutely.
that's what I like about it. Yeah.
My fascination is with Puma Punko. I thought that what they described there and what they showed, and having an engineer evaluate the precision of those pieces of stone is just absolutely amazing.
How did they do that? I just don't get it, you know. And also, you see,
they can't do it now. They don't have the technology to do it now. How could it have been done then?
Yeah. And also, you see rock that seems to have been melted into a position, and it opens up again, and it's...
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's like folded in, isn't it? And then it holds... it's an exact dead fit. I just don't know how they could do it. You know, it's weird. But, so do you like ancient aliens, Juliet?
I do. There's elements of that I agree with what you're both saying there, and it sort of throws me back to when I used to watch Stargate. Do you remember Stargate?
Yeah.
And in my head, it was like, yeah, this is just the perfect explanation with, and this happened and Ra happened and Anubis and so on and so forth. And it's like, this actually makes sense, when you link everything together.
Yeah.
Like I said, more my personal belief than anybody else's, but it's like I've always had an interest in religion, in Egypt, in anything a bit over there.
I think they do maybe sensationalise a bit, some of it a little bit much, but then again, it's an entertainment programme and they've got to make it interesting, But generally, I think a lot of it is basically there for, and you can make it a bit as you will, can't you? I know it fascinates me.
I agree. Yeah.
But, you've got an assortment of characters in your book, Paul, and you say that all the characters are based on real people. How did you meet them? Can you tell us a bit about what kind of influence they've had on your life?
Well, most of them I've met through, media, social media, but there are one or two that I have met personally, and the ones that I have met through social media, I continue to have relationships with. And we've had very deep discussion, chats, and we've shared a lot of information together. So it was really that, the impact that they had on me was so great that I needed to include them in the plot of the novel to tie everything together, and it comes out pretty well. In fact, one of the individuals, the character's name is Katrina Herman. I am actually writing a prequel to this novel, and it's specifically about her. And so she and I are collaborating on the second novel. Right.
She's a former CIA asset.
She is, she used to be working alongside the CIA because of her psychokinetic ability, and she was involved in a lot of experiments that had to do with psychokinetics. In fact, she was actually used as a guinea pig in some cases unknowingly, and so that's going to be in the second novel.
Right. So I'm pretty sure they do experiment with things like that as well in the CIA.
Sure.
Yeah, I've heard quite a few things about that.
I could explain a couple things. The key events that occurred to me that led me to the path. As I mentioned, the Eric Donikin interview, and then when I was in the service, I was a captain in the United States Air Force, and I was at a base where it was the Center for Air Force Research and Development, and I was a construction manager for a specific project that dealt with an organization called Foreign Technology Division. And that building was a large two-story warehouse, no building, no windows. The site was protected by motion detectors. If you had even a top secret clearance, you would have to be escorted by an individual around the building. Once you entered the building, you would sign in, get a card, and that says escort required. You go through the locked doors, and everything is white. The doors are white, the frames are white, the floor is white, the ceiling, walls. There are no directories. There are no signs on the doors, no numbers. Every individual that is in an office behind that door does not know what goes on in the next door. It is compartmented. So, my project was on the second floor, and we gutted the second floor to make sure that it was going to be enough space for supercomputers that would be going up there. Mind you, this is in the late 80s. Mm-hmm. So, the computer was still kind of large back then. Mm-hmm. So one of the tasks that I needed to do was to investigate the condition of the space and make certain that it was ready for the contractor to go in and do the new work. And one of my tasks on doing that is looking at drawings to making certain that the drawings were correct. The drawings that depicted the existing conditions, which are called as-builts technically. So, thumbing through the drawings, I saw a sheet that indicated that there was a basement. Well, normally warehouse buildings don't have basements. So it got me scratching my head, and I made sure that that sheet was not incorrectly placed in that set. Sure enough, it did match the footprint of the building. So right there, I discovered that there was a secret basement. Then, and I'm looking at my escort, making sure that the escort wasn't seeing what I'm seeing, and I thumbed through some more, and then I read a detail sheet which shows an enlarged floor plan, and it indicates a cryogenic chamber in the basement. Well, right there, I realized that I was looking at highly classified material that should not have been in that situation. But if I were to report it, it would cause all kinds of problems, especially for me, since it was highly classified information, and I preferred just to make it look like I never saw it. And I rolled it all up and put it away. And I kept that secret for 5 years after I left the service. But it was confirmed to me when I read Phil Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, where he indicated that the cadavers were shipped to the base that I was at. And so it's quite evident that that was a cryogenic chamber for exotic cadavers.
Right. Yeah, I've read that book. It's quite fascinating. I think that Corso was probably fed some bum information along the way in that book, but I do believe most of it. He was a high-ranking officer, and he was worked at the Pentagon, so he must have had this inside knowledge about what was going on. Did you see any evidence of sort of like reverse engineering or anything like that, or?
No, because I was in the civil engineering part of the program, I only dealt with facilities. There were facility projects that I worked on that dealt with lasers, that dealt with anechoic chambers, testing for stealth and things like that. But I wouldn't say that that's reverse engineering. That was just cutting edge technology.
What about your own beliefs, though? Do you believe that they were using some sort of alien technology? I mean, you can only conjecture, maybe, but I don't know what your knowledge of, and what you actually did see, or what you can actually say you saw.
Well, I think the explosion of all of this high technology that we got in the last couple decades points to an insertion of information that would assist us in progress. So I think there's something to that.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that there's actually a secret space program going on It may be outside of your remit on your job and everything, but where does all this money go from the Pentagon? They use billions every year, don't they? And it all goes into some sort of a big black budget or a big black hole. And my feeling is it must be going into some sort of a secret space program.
Well, I tell you, that is just another kettle of fish. When you're talking about black projects and funding for that, then you start to enter in all kinds of theory about CIA involvement with Afghanistan, selling heroin in the black market to fund it. I kind of go into that a little bit in the novel related to Tara Everly, who was a United States Air Force senior airman stationed at Nellis, and she was a radar specialist. And she acknowledges that she actually went to the moon as a radar specialist for Black Ops. So the one thing that I establish in the novel is that any of this secret stuff that's going on is, and this is where I tie in the ET phenomenon, and we're talking about the bad ETs this time, is not related to our military, but it involves military individuals that have military background that are paid, essentially mercenaries. There are over 3 million mercenaries around the world. A lot of them work for these black ops. Mm-hmm. It's just for money. That's all. And they're also sociopaths. So it fits perfectly with what they're trying to do. And it's pretty well detailed in my novel.
Do you feel that there have been ETs working within the government or government projects, and the government are well aware of ET presence?
I don't think they're working with as much as, I don't think it's the government. I think it's actually, as Eisenhower suggested when he left, that there is a military-industrial complex.
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel that what happened at Holloman when Eisenhower met the extraterrestrials to get an exchange of technology is that he left, but what remained was our military contractors, and they were able to enter into an agreement, and they've been getting the information, not us. So it's not the government. It's actually this military-industrial complex which we have no control over. And I believe that when Kennedy was assassinated, he was trying to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they obviously that was labelled Majestic 12. Some people say that was a fictional title, but Stanton Friedman did a lot of research into it, and he seems to think it was real.
I have a briefing document from the Truman administration to the Eisenhower administration on Majestic 12.
You do?
Yes.
Ah. Oh. Where did we go?
You see, one of the individuals that I made contact with, her mother was CIA, and her mother left her hundreds of documents before she died. Wow. And she gave me some PDFs of those documents, and I used that information to put together stuff in the novel.
Wow. Is it out there, or is it your own sort of individual property? Or is it out there to be found?
No, it's not out there. She has her copies. I have my copies.
Right. Okay. So you've got stuff that's not available to everybody else. That is interesting.
Right.
It's pretty scary, that, Julia, isn't it? I mean, how much more is out there that we don't know about?
I was going to ask something quite pertinent, actually. Obviously, you've got the information, you've got the disinformation. Some is correct, some is incorrect. Mm-hmm. Do you think there are people, members of staff out there, and their sole job is to listen to podcasts, conversations, phones, internet, etc., to either let the disinformation propel itself forward into the world, or sometimes, this is where it gets probably kind of interesting, go and visit the people who are talking about the information. What do you think, Paul?
Well, for myself, I think I'm a small fish in the whole pond, and as long as the public at large is confused about what's going on, as long as you see hoaxes upon hoaxes on the internet, it's satisfying whoever is has a stake in it. So they've got much more important things to do than to be picking on people like us.
Yeah, they'd be chasing all around the world, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Depends what you know, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you're putting out there as well. I presume it's.
I could tell you this, folks. When I wrote the novel, and I wrote to over 81 agents around the country to get published, to get it published and to get an agent to publish. The response that I got back from every one of them used the same wording to reject it.
Really?
Yes.
So that's obviously controlled by one factor then, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is an example of how they suppress. There is a pressure in the mainstream to discourage this kind of information at large, and so I did the best I can, and I self-published. But the same response was, "I'm sorry, this is not a good fit with us." And I mean, they use the same exact words, exact, and that maybe that's their way of saying, yeah, we like it, but we can't do it, and we would like to do it, but here is an example of the control that is upon us, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because it's kind of like a secret knowledge they don't really want us knowing too much about.
Right.
That's interesting. You mentioned in the description of your novel, it crosses over different genres and goes into human spirituality. I know you said a little bit about your spiritual past, but have you had any other kind of spiritual experiences? I mean, such things. I mean, do you believe in ghosts and things like that? That's kind of where I'm going with that.
Well, all right. So that's kind of two elements that could be discussed in depth. But I could tell you that I started meditating in 2009, and I got real good at it. Where I had two out-of-body experiences that were deeply spiritual. The first one was going through a wormhole, and that was an absolutely amazing experience. There were colors, the motion, my heart was racing, I was vibrating in the position that I was in, and then when I realized what was going on, I was back in my body. And I have that documented also in the novel in a chapter. The second one, which is even more amazing, is going out of body and going into an atmosphere where I was enveloped by a indigo light, a blue indigo light, and the light got stronger as I moved closer to it. And as I got closer to it, there was a feeling of euphoria that was getting stronger. And as finally making out what was ahead of me was just a mass of millions of flickering indigo blue lights, like miniature bees on a hive with the indigo color. It was just absolutely amazing. And again, once I realized what it was, I was back in my body, and that was getting as close to what we call God as possible, where God is really an energy made of all the sentient beings, spirits that are between lives in our universe. It's all in one mass, and that mass has the same consciousness where one thought can make such a powerful difference. So that energy is called the source by some people, I guess.
Yeah.
And so what essentially is, there's a lot of truth in the Bible. For instance, when it says that God is all around us and God is in us, well, yeah, it's true, because our spirit is, well, it's not really in us, it's connected to us in a spiritual realm, in another dimension, but what they're trying to explain is what I am describing to you.
Yeah, it's very difficult to describe, but that's kind of what I was kind of alluding to earlier when I said about God is all of us, and I don't actually see God as a person per se, as such, as like Juliet mentioned, but I think we're all part of a theme that we all go back to. It's very difficult to kind of describe it. But I think you described it pretty well the way you did there, Paul.
Well, the failure of most religions is making it a being, because if they say that it doesn't have a beginning or an end, well, what has beginning has no beginning, no end? Energy. Yeah. Energy has always been there. So when you say that it is a being, no, you got to go beyond that, and you got to go beyond, and you have to go beyond something that is almost unthinkable. So, that's where I guess the mainstream religious people need to understand.
Yeah. And your out-of-body experiences, can you control them? Do you actually lay down at night and think to yourself, I'm going to do an out-of-body experience? Or because some people seem to be able to do that, don't they?
Well, I sincerely believe that it was something that was meant to be. So it's not something that I had control over. It was something that I was allowed to experience. Yeah. And that the timing was right. Yeah. I mentioned to you that that weekend that I wrote 31 pages of outline, and I never strayed from that outline to write the novel. Well, after I wrote the outline, coming out of the shower, I looked at my arm, and there was a burn mark on my inner part of my arm, and it was a perfect triangle with a bisecting line. Actually, it's still there. So I can't say it was. It is. And when talking to my psychic friends, they indicated that it was very likely a sign of acceptance.
Oh, see.
Very interesting. I was just thinking along those lines. Paul, David, what do you think about the idea or theology that some of us are more predestined or preordained to pick up things like ghosts or UFOs or whatever's out there? Do you think some people just are more open or genetically predisposed? What do you think?
Well, I think our role on the planet is determined while we are part of that source energy. We are given an assignment. And so once we are given that assignment and we become in the earth form, humans, we may not know that assignment. We may not understand it, but things happen in our life to put us on that path, regardless of what we try to do. And once things happen, once we start to recognize what is going on, then we start to understand that role. So, I have that in my prologue, in fact, about, what is destiny, and where I have essentially identified belief systems where individuals think that, that there is a force that is greater than them, that is determining their path in life, and some feel that they have the free will. And then there are some, like myself, as I said, that were given a special assignment to carry out. And, and there are many that have had that kind of assignment given to them. There are many out there that have something to say, that are being given the experiences, just like you say, that are being allowed the the gift of interaction with other dimensions. So, I indicate that.
Now, I'll turn that back on you, Juliet. What's your beliefs on that?
You could say it's nature nurture. You could say it's the environment you were brought up in. You could say it's like Sliding Doors, the film with Gwyneth Paltrow. One thing could go one way, one thing could go the other. It's a bit of a weird one, though. Is it fate? Or is it, do you make your own fate? Or is it all laid out in a book and you just don't get to see it until you're dead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, you could be guided through one, or you could make a decision to go through one door, but then there'll be another couple of doors which will take you back to where you would have been going anyway.
Right.
You know,
right.
That's kind of the way. I think if you're fated to do something, you will end up in that position anyway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I see it.
It could be the long route.
Yeah.
I remember that as a child there was books, I don't know if it may just be me, and it was like an adventure book, and it was like, if you decide to do this, please go to page 22. So you go to page 22, you'd read it, you get to the bottom. Do you do this? Go to page 17. So to me it was kind of like that, because you had different endings.
Yeah.
It was very peculiar. Very peculiar.
Yeah, like you say, it'll take you the long way around, but you'll still get there anyway.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, my own. Actually, I wish personally that I was more sensitive to spiritual beings. I wish I could see them or sense them. I can't. I don't regard myself as being psychic at all. I really wish I was. I have seen a couple of UFOs, but as far as being set out on any particular projects on this planet, I don't know. Only this small radio show that I've ended up on. It's probably my outlet, and to speaking to great people like Paul and many others. And that's kind of, I'm on a learning curve myself. That's the way I see it. And I think that a lot of people like Paul and yourself and everyone, all the guests that I've had on the show, that's my learning. You know, that's kind of the way I see it.
I could tell you this, David, that you have a greater impact on individuals than you think. And one thing that I indicated in my book in the prologue is that even though the individuals that think that free will is what determines their destiny, what really determines their destiny are the individuals that they meet, and the individuals that we meet and interact with have a greater impact on our lives than we have on ourselves. So and that's why it's important, being altruistic, that we treat each other the way we would like to be treated.
Yeah, I agree entirely with that, Paul. That's a very good way of putting it. Yeah. It's like I say, I mean, whenever I do these shows, I mean, it's never my show. I always think of it as the guest show. It's their opportunity to put themselves forward. I'm just sort of like the bit on the front with the. But hey, your book, it does sound fascinating, Paul. So, what have you discovered from your spiritual contacts that you feel is more important for others to understand?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, that there is a link right now between the phenomenon of the extraterrestrials and our spirituality, and the actual idea behind the disclosure paradox. You see all kinds of individuals that are fighting for disclosure, that are trying to get the governments to reveal secrets about our interaction with extraterrestrials, about them visiting us, about actually living on the planet with us. And I have documented 4 instances where we have possible extraterrestrial beings cohabitating with us in Antarctica, Alaska, the New Mexico, Colorado region, and off the coast of Ireland. The thing about disclosure is that it's not going to happen, because we as human beings are under a universal quarantine. We are under universal quarantine because of our DNA. Our DNA is really what when the Bible says that we have original sin, it's our DNA that is our original sin, and why we can't get rid of it. It has nothing to do with Adam and Eve. And so our DNA makes us barbaric in the face of the rest of the universe. We are barbaric. We are violent. We have a incredibly irrational obsession with materialistic things compared to the more spiritual, enlightened, and progressive beings out there. And worst of all, and what is being manifested throughout the world right now and being fought against finally, is that we are genocidal, racist, if you will. So as long as we continue to behave in that manner, it's not going to happen, because if it were to happen, that trait will reveal itself, and it will reveal itself as one of the most dangerous things in the world, because once we gain the technology that those progressive races have, we would eventually, because of our industries or our politics or our greed, whatever, we will weaponize it, and because of our fears of the differences and that genocidal trait that we have, we will actually weaponize it and use it against those beings.
It's a rather scary outlook. Mm-hmm. So really what you're saying is that Earth could actually be the proverbial hell that is spoken about.
Well, I'd hate to call it that. It's certainly, some people call it a prison planet. It's a prison planet because of ourselves. It's not because some of the external force. We need to recognize our flaws, and we need to resolve them if we want to be back with the universal community. And once we are back with the universal community, recognize that we have our act together and that we are progressive in thought and in spirituality, because we are spiritually corrupt right now. Then there may be so much improvement in our health, our way of life. The depletion of our resources may be a thing of the past, but we've got to change first.
Yeah. Do you feel there could have been other civilizations that have been like us in the past, and maybe they've learnt from their mistakes?
Gosh, it's very interesting to think about, for instance, Atlantis, and think that there actually were more advanced forms of life before us.
Yeah, on this planet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's quite a possibility. When you talk about the Bible, they never mention anything about prehistoric animals and things like that. Yeah, I don't know what your outlook on that is, Julia, either. How do you see that? Because you like I say, you've been a little bit religious, haven't you, in your outlook?
Is Earth hell?
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. Yeah, I think it's possible that maybe that's what it is.
There's a scene, and sorry to use Men in Black as an analogy here, there's a wonderful skit, as I call it, at the end, and you've got the aliens and they're playing with a bag of marbles, and Earth is one of the marbles. Yeah. I quite like that, because it kind of explains an awful lot. It's like, yeah, that'll be fine, Again, how much of that is true? How much of that is not true? Will we know? Probably not.
Yeah.
I think that explains something, but in a very abstract manner.
It's, I think one of the conversations I probably had with David in the midst of time, I said, what if we were on stage and we had Paul the Alien?
Yeah.
It's like, is it animatronics? Is it clever lighting? Is it this? Is it that? And it could be real. But you're going to get about 90% of the audience and anybody else who's filming going, it's fake, it was this, it was that. But there's that 10% of us that go, but it's real. Yeah. It's just everybody else's belief system has gone a bit wonky.
Yeah, that's true. And it leads you back to the point you don't know what to believe and what not.
There you go.
So the one problem that we have, and I titled the book The Disclosure Paradox, and you don't find out what the paradox is until the very end. But the paradox is, how as a human race can we improve ourselves if we're not being allowed to know what's wrong with us? You see that?
Yeah, that's true. I'll go back to the disclosure thing again. So you think it will never happen? Now, President Trump just recently said he knows a bit about Roswell. What do you make of that?
Oh, good grief.
Okay. Say no more.
That kind of answers it by your tone. It's
no, I mean,
back to independence.
The thing is, he was asked a question, and I guess he's giving his idea of it, but maybe he does know more. I mean, who knows?
Look. The man doesn't even read his intelligence briefings. He tweets during intelligence briefings.
He does.
No one's going to give him that information.
No, that's true. I don't think any president would have that. I think you need to be in the top 12 people that control the planet anyway, which is not usual to presidents or any of our prime ministers or any other prime minister. Yeah, I think you're right. It's just an interesting thing. I thought, well, disclosure. And another thing, I mean, has disclosure already happened? Because loads and loads of top secret information has been put out there. It's just a matter of finding it. And quite often you can come across paperwork, and it does actually point to UFOs or some strange thing that's happened. It's just a matter of finding it in amongst all the thousands and thousands of sheets of paper that have been put out.
Yeah. I think we need to find another term, or we need to classify, just like we have classified contact, first, second, third, degree, fourth and fifth. I think we need to also classify degree of disclosure, and I think disclosure probably can be interacted with the idea of contact. So. To me, full disclosure is when there is actual exchange of technology. Yeah,
I can see that. The next thing for you is you're writing another book, like, as you said. Have you got a title for it yet?
The second novel?
Yeah, which is the prologue, isn't it?
Yes, but it will probably puzzle you as far as the title, because it's rather abstract. It's called, right now, as I have it, it's called Sparkle and Pain.
Right. Sparkle and Pain. But is that his working title, or is that going to be his title? Okay.
That, so far, it works very well, because the sparkle is a very positive thing, and it kind of makes you think about flickering things and lights, and that kind of goes to the kinetic thing. But pain is what she had endured for a very long time. And then it kind of ties into, since it's a prequel to the novel The Disclosure Paradox, you have a paradox there where she has sparkle and pain.
Right. Now, and is this going to be a series? Is there going to be like an epilogue as well? Is there going to be a third one?
I have an idea for a third prequel, and that's about the main character's ancestry. And then I have an idea about two sequels, and that is about Deborah Swift, who was raised in the Air Force family. She was a security policeman. She's African American, gay, and an atheist. And you find out in the Disclosure Paradox that
don't give too much away.
Well, she has a son, and he's a Men in Black.
Right. Now, do you hope that some of these may get to movie? To be a movie?
Well, right now I'm working on the prequel, but I did start a outline for a screenplay on the Disclosure Paradox, but and I have a full-time job too, so.
Yeah.
And we are raising our grandson, so at the same time, there really isn't a lot of leisure. Just want to repeat, the book is called The Disclosure Paradox. I'm Paul Vecchiet, and I have a website. It's www.thedisclosureparadox.com, all one word, and individuals can go in there, read excerpts from the novel, read reviews, which it's been getting really good reviews, read the descriptions of the characters and the table of contents, and all, without having to, charge a fee or anything. So there's a lot of stuff to read there.
Yeah. Well, you saved me having to ask you, because I was going to ask you if you got any leaks or anything, so you so you did it for me. That's great. But what I'll do, Paul, I'll put a link on the Paranormal Dimensions page for it, and
Thank you.
And like the book and everything. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, have you got an email address, or is that all on the site?
It's on the site.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
So you may well get some messages or anything. Anyway, Juliet and Paul, thank you very much for helping me out again and making a great show, Paul. And thank you for coming on and doing it all again. And
all right.
my apologies again for it all going wrong the first time.
Thank you.
No, and thank you, and good luck with your book. And perhaps when you get your other book out, you'll come back on and tell us all about those.
I certainly will.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Great. Okay, then, Paul. You take care of yourself and have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Right, I'll say good night to you, Juliet. Thanks for coming on and helping me out. I'll be in touch.
As always.
I'll be in touch. The check's in the post, all right?
Yeah.
Speak to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. You've been listening to Paranormal Dimensions. I'm David Young on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Hope you listen again next week. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hope you've enjoyed it. Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.